Who will be the most impactful transfers for Nebraska in 2025? Our lists are coming up.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and we're on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase.
All right, welcome. It's Thursday. February's coming along. We had ice on the roads in Omaha overnight, some yesterday. Hope everybody's handled that well. If you are around here, I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. Nebraska hoops, big win last night at Washington. The Huskers come back from a double-digit deficit at halftime, 13 points down in the first half. They win 86-72 going away. It was not close at the end. Bryce Williams with another big game. Juwan Gary had a big game after overcoming some foul trouble. Nebraska's just doing the little things. We'll talk about that later in this episode. Want to get to what we discussed some on Wednesday as we kind of went through some topics at the end of the show. We are going to get into a list. I have a list. Connor, do you have a list?
I have a list
of the transfers in this class for Nebraska, this winter class for Nebraska, who will impact the team the most in 2025. So we're not asking who is going to help the Huskers down the road, who might be an All-American in 2027. That's a different show. We'll do that show sometime. But this one today is about the next 10 months. The next 10 months, is that right? Yeah, 10, 11 months. Who's going to be make the biggest impact this year out of the 16 that Nebraska signed? Any thoughts on this topic? Do you like this topic?
I love this topic, and because I like making lists, because I'm a sports talk radio host, and it's easy to do so. So it's great. My thought as I went through it is it was easy for me to get to like 6 or 7, a little less easy to get to 5. Like, and I think we're both dealing with the same names out of the 6, 7, 8 here. But I think we have different orders. So I can't wait to compare our lists.
Yeah, you can see my list because I typed it into the document that we look at here. And
I have state secret.
Yeah, it's in the order. So I'm not sure how you're interpreting this, but I have a general idea of what you might think. So let's I'll throw out my number 5 guy, and then you can go with your number 5 guy. And if we have some repetitive conversation, that's fine. We'll handle that as we go. So my number 5 guy is Kevin Gallick, the long snapper. So I'm buying in to the Matt Rule narrative that the long snapper was a huge part of the reason. Well, he said like the main reason. I'm not saying that, but a huge part of the reason that Nebraska had all the special teams woes in 2024. If one main piece of the cog isn't working, if it's rotten at the center, then it's all going to be messed up as you go out. Like even if the long snapper's not on the field during punt returns, man, that got messed up because your long snapper can't get the ball back to your holder or your punter.
Kevin Gallick for me, Mitch, was not he was not in
your top 5.
No,
not in consideration.
Not even in consideration. No.
Okay. Well, I went outside the box a little bit.
You did.
I think it's legit. I mean, I think that he will fix Nebraska's problems overnight with the snapping position, and that does matter in what is 1/3, at least 1/3, certainly 1/3 of the game of football. It's not going to fix all of that. Like Mike Eckler probably will be a bigger impact than Kevin Gallick, but they're going to be able to snap the ball. If he's healthy, they're going to be able to snap the ball.
Right. And I believe that could be accomplished by just about anybody. Although Nebraska
tried with 2 last year.
Yeah. It's amazing. I've never seen such a thing. I mean, it feels like that's one of the things that you just never have to really worry about at the collegiate or the NFL level. But for whatever reason, Nebraska did. So yes, I understand the case, but I think he'll sink into the monotony of sort of everybody into the shadows, which is
if you don't notice him, that's great.
Correct. My number 5 is Elijah Pritchett. He's lower on he's lower on my list than he is on yours. In fact, I have another offensive lineman that is in front of Elijah Pritchett, and you probably know who that is by me saying that. Just then, I just like I think it's good that Nebraska got a tackle, but there was some like there's obviously some hype behind him because he went to Alabama, and Nebraska needed so desperately to get a tackle, and he is the tackle that they got. But the production has been shaky over the last year or so here. So I think he's an important piece for Nebraska to have in there. And he's sort of like a wild card, I think, a little bit, but I don't know that I could depend on him for solid production. And that's sort of what I was looking at on my list.
Okay. I'll give my thinking on him when we get to him on my list. So at number 4 on my list, I have Rocco Spindler, the most recent, the last of the 16 transfers to come in from Notre Dame. He's a 23-game starter. Big time transfer. I think he's probably Nebraska's most reliable interior offensive lineman as soon as he gets up to speed and can learn what Donovan Raiola has in store. If he plays center, I might put him up a notch or two on this list. If he's a guard and Nebraska moves Justin Evans to center, then he's a key piece in the cog for an offensive line that has to have its act together. Nebraska's added all these pieces at wide receiver. They're going to depend on Dylan Raiola to be a top section of the Big Ten quarterback, a quarterback that is one of the better quarterbacks in the country, and he's got to be protected by that offensive line. He has to be confident that when he drops back, he's not going to get hit. And the run game, this Spindler as an interior guy is going to be huge in the run game, and he's done it. Like, look at Notre Dame's production and what Notre Dame did this year against the schedule that it played. This guy's proven. Huge addition for Nebraska.
That was my thing. So, like I said, my list will follow that sort of through line. That's why Rocco Spindler is my number 2. I think it's a really big pickup for Nebraska, and I just like guys who have produced before. And so I'll give you my 4 and 3 as we go down the list here. So I already said Elijah Pritchett. We'll go back to 4 now. Dasan McCullough. I'm super interested in him as an athlete, and
upside.
There's plenty of upside there. And what Rule said, I thought was a different approach than seemingly has been taken with him throughout his collegiate career about McCullough on Saturday was sort of an under the radar comment because we're focused on so many other things. But he said, well, look, he's been moving around and he's never really had a home. And so basically we're going to try and give him a home and see how he could grow from there. I think that's going to be good for him and good for his development. Obviously, there's a lot of versatility to his game, and they're going to use that. But I'm super excited about the upside of McCullough. And then the production of Marcus Watson Trent is like undeniable. He's number 3 on my list. I like 100 tackles in each of the last 3 years. Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year last year. Like, I just love that. that almost always translates to production at the next level. So I think that guy's going to come in and he's going to rack up some tackles. He's got great instincts, and he's number 3 on my list.
So these two are interesting. What position? Nebraska's going to find the position that works for Dasan McCullough. He's 6'5", 235 listed on the Nebraska roster. What position do you think he plays?
I kind of think they run him off the edge a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he rushes the passer
like an edge guy in a 4-3. He's not a 3-4 edge, right? He's not like a Ty Robinson kind of edge.
No. He'd be a stand-up linebacker in that.
Are you thinking about outside backer like a Jack?
Right.
Yeah. Where Nebraska has Willis McGahee, and I mean they're going to be loaded at that position if that's where Dasan McCullough lands. I mean the temptation is like, oh, you could play him at Rover. Maybe he's a little heavy for that, but you could certainly play him at inside linebacker. I mean, he's built somewhat similarly, a little more thick than Javen Wright. But I understand why Indiana and Oklahoma have been kind of greedy in wanting to just play this guy wherever he was needed. And that will be the challenge for Nebraska because that kind of thing's going to come up. Like injuries inevitably will happen. Somebody's not going to pan out, have the year that you think. And you're like, all right, we got this guy who's like a Swiss Army knife in the middle of our defense and really could play at all three levels. I mean, you could play him in a 4-3 as a guy. I don't know. He's probably not a traditional guy with the hand in the ground, but like sometimes you'll have a guy at the line of scrimmage in a 4-3 when you're technically in a 3-4. We saw that a lot from Nebraska last year, and he's for all intents and purposes on the line. That could be Dayshawn McCullough. So yeah, I'm really intrigued by him too. I'm just curious, like in Nebraska's quest to find one position for him, what that position is. And with Watson Trent, yeah, I agree with you. He's a huge add. He's a stabilizer because what he does is just he gives you the security that you need. Like you're losing John Bullock he's an inside linebacker. That's just what Marquise Watson Trent is.
Yep.
And you got Vincent Shavers, and now you got MWT. So I like those picks. I'll give you my number 3, and then we'll take a break and come back and do the top 2. Andrew Marshall is my number 3. Because I think it was maybe the most underrated factor about the Nebraska defense and some of the struggles that it had in 2024 was the fact that after Tommy Hill went down with injury, it didn't have a consistent corner to play opposite Sear Wright. Fortunately for Nebraska, Sear Wright stepped up and became a guy in the second half of the season who was dependable and you could use as a lockdown. But they didn't have a second guy. Like they were playing safeties out of position at corner on the other side in Hartzog and Buford. And they got burned at times. And Nebraska went young against like UCLA with Jeremiah Charles. They maybe found somebody in the Pinstripe Bowl in Donovan Jones. In fact, was listening to your colleague Gary Sharp this morning on the radio as I was doing the school run. And he suggests that Donovan Jones will be a starter at Nebraska for corner as a redshirt freshman in 2025. I don't know if Donovan Jones is going to beat out Andrew Marshall. That's why I have Andrew Marshall at number 3.
I think there's a giant pot of secondary players, and that is going to get mixed up big time in spring ball. And so yeah, Andrew Marshall is certainly in the conversation for me. He would have been like my 6th guy on the list, but I didn't have him on my top 5. Okay. We will finish off our lists. I think we're trending. We're both trending toward one direction here, but we'll come back and discuss why after this on the Locked On Nebraska podcast.
Okay, take a moment here to tell you about Game Time. Game Time's got Super Bowl tickets. So if you're in New Orleans, you find yourself there, you want to go, the game's only a couple days away. Go and check it out. See what you might be able to do. Or any kind of live event that you want to attend. The place to check first is Game Time. Live events bring the energy and excitement, the connection with fans when you go. It's unmatched. If you want to find tickets, there's nothing like the Game Time experience. It can help you elevate your opportunity to get into the stadium, into the arena, the concert hall. Check out Game Time's new feature. It's called Game Time Picks. You get tickets with ease to the events that you want to see. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. I have used Game Time. I've used it for basketball. I've used it for baseball. Give it a shot. Browsing through the deals is a breeze. I love it. It lets me see the seat views before I buy. The app shows me the total price up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Plus, it's got the on-time ticket delivery and the lowest price guarantee to provide complete peace of mind. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
All right, welcome back. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you. The number one guy that I think the number one impact transfer for Nebraska.
Your 2? Did we go with your 2?
My 2 is Rocco Spindler, who we discussed a little bit before. So I'll put him in there once again.
Apologies.
Just love what he brings to the table. My number one transfer is Dane Key, and it's the production piece. But like if we were to do this more globally, Mitch, if we were to do like a biggest additions, we combine some coaches in there, like
we will.
Yeah, right. So just a preview for that, like the combination of him and Dylan Raiola and Dana Holgerson, even though Dylan Raiola is not new, it's just it's really intriguing. And then you can add in a couple of those other wide receivers as well. Like I can't wait to see what they fire up with a few games under their belt, obviously at the end of last year, and then an entire offseason. And they're able to retool things a little bit on the offensive end with Dylan Raiola at the helm. So Dane Key's my number one. I think he's automatic production right away.
Yeah, he's my number one. I'll get to my number two in a second. We've already talked about him, but Dane Key was a pretty easy choice for me, number one, just because how important that spot is for Nebraska. As the receivers who went in the portal, it was an exodus with Malachi Coleman and Jalen Lloyd, and Nebraska lost Isaiah Nair and Jamal Banks, who were seniors last season. So Key is 6'3", 210. At Kentucky in 38 games. He started 35, caught 126 passes for 1,870 yards in his career and 14 touchdowns. You're talking about a guy doing this in the SEC, fifth on Kentucky's all-time reception list. So nothing about what he sees at this level is going to come as a surprise to him. Like, he's ready to walk in. He's Dane turnkey. How about that? Like you.
Hello.
Yeah.
I love it.
I just came up with that on the fly right there.
It's automatic turnkey right there. Wow. We got a regular Chris Berman here. This is great.
Yeah. My number two is Pritchett, the other big time SEC transfer, multi-year starter at Alabama. Are you kidding me? Like, I know the guy had some struggles last year, and like his pass protection PFF numbers weren't great, but like, it's not easy. And we've mentioned this. It's not easy to hold blocks as a right tackle for Jalen Milroe. Like, it's a guy who gets outside the pocket. And I think that has something to do with the fact that the pressure numbers were where they're at. It's more about what Nebraska needed. And Nebraska was desperate for an offensive tackle who was at the level to be able to walk in and start right away. And that's what it got in Pritchett. So he's for me of tremendous importance. I put him above Spindler for that reason, because he plays such a premium position, and that success and stability on the outside of Nebraska's offensive line. I think Nebraska should go get another tackle in the spring portal period if it can. But having Pritchett is just a giant relief, I think, for Raiola and Dana Holgerson especially.
Some guys that got tossed around just quickly here before we get to Nebraska ball on our list. Like, I didn't have Marshall on mine, but like, obviously he's going to be an impactful player for them next year. Andrew Marshall, Isaiah Hunter got consideration, I think, on both of our lists. Just kind of missed. And then you had one. Well, Jack McAllister, the punter, like, who's going to come in and provide
dark horse
instant production. Give me the case for Nebraska's presumed backup quarterback this year, Marcos Davila.
Yeah, we haven't talked about him at all.
No.
Like, totally under the radar. He committed in December. It might have been around the time. Was it like just before Christmas? And I mean, we were doing shows. Why didn't we do a whole show on Marcos Davila? I don't.
Yeah, I think it was leading into the bowl game, maybe at like, I'm not sure.
This is somebody we need to like double back. I'm talking more about me, like in my job. I need to like double back and try to figure out who this guy is. I think I reached out to him after his commitment. And most of these transfers, they've all got agents and they don't really do interviews. In the old days, this isn't like high school recruits where, on your radio show, you just call somebody up and the next thing you know, you're talking to a 17-year-old on the phone. It's like the worst 7 minutes of radio that you've ever done. Mm-hmm. The transfers don't really do that unless it's Adrian Martinez, and then it's the best 7 minutes of radio that you've ever
done. Nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. Signing day was yesterday, by the way, and it reminded me of all of those times that I'd be like texting like 116-year-olds, 17-year-olds on the day before signing day. Hey, you sure you're good to come on? And then not get a response, and then you just call them, and you're like, all right, here we go, let's do it. Bad times.
And they're like walking their dog, and you can't hear because of the wind, and
if you're in class, beep beep beep.
Yeah. Well, transfers aren't like that. I talked to Andrew Marshall and wrote about him around this portal period, but everybody, and I didn't try everyone, but most of the guys, like Key, I really tried to get, and it's like an NFL player. Like you got to go through hoops and talk to agents, and like, they're not getting paid obviously to do this. So it's like not at the top of their list or the middle of their list. But Davila, I feel like he's in school now, so it's going to have to go through Nebraska. But I want to talk to him in the spring and find out what went into that decision for him to come in and be the backup when Dylan is entrenched for at least the next 2 years. And then you have the other Raiola, Dayton, coming in, who may not walk in and be the day one starter, but it's just that name and that family. I'm intrigued. And the reason that I put him as a dark horse here is very simple, because if Dylan Raiola twists his ankle, this guy's the starting quarterback. That's it.
Yeah, right away. It happens very fast. So like, yeah, I could see where he ends up being an impactful player. Now, only bad circumstances would probably lead to that this year. But we've talked about this before. Nebraska's backup quarterback always seems to be a relatively important person. And then Williams Nwaneri, who hasn't got mentioned yet, but certainly like a wild card guy if Nebraska can find a way to make him impactful right away. I mean, that would be huge for them.
Could be the most likely to be a first rounder someday. This is more based off like his high school hype and just what his measurables are, his rankings as a recruit. I think how people saw him coming out of Kansas City, but Nebraska's going to try to unlock that, and it's probably not all going to show in 2025. We'll see. He could break out, but I think down the road, he's the guy who has the highest ceiling.
All right, coming back here, Nebraska basketball has a little something called a winning streak all of the sudden, and they're hot all of the sudden. What a week has made a giant difference for Nebraska basketball. We'll discuss it after this. But first, a little message from our friends from Prize Picks. That is exactly right. Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with more than 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And right now, you can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so you stay in play even if one of your players gets hurt. Here's how it works. You pick a player, you look them up. This week, you take a look at the big game. I'm looking at them right now. They're running a deal. How about this on Prize Picks? Patrick Mahomes higher or lower than a half of a pass yard. Do you think Patrick Mahomes might get that in the big game this weekend? I think he probably will. So
seems likely.
Yeah, I would say so as well. There's plenty more options for you on Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks apps today and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONCollege on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game.
Okay, welcome back to this Thursday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. I'm Mitch Sherman. Connor Happer is with me. Mailbag show coming up on Friday. Get those questions in. Lots to discuss. You want to talk about Nebraska hoops, what it's got going on Super Bowl Sunday. You want to talk about what Matt Rule had to say last weekend. Big day today for Nebraska volleyball. Danny Busboom Kelly will be introduced in front of a large crowd perhaps, at the Bob Devaney Sports Center. We will see. She's going to have her press conference, the introductory press conference 1 week after John Cook held his goodbye press conference. So questions about that, would love to take those on. Also, it is Super Bowl week. Have you gotten your food situation aligned? I heard you on your show discussing this at some point while I was out driving around the Omaha Metro this week.
No, I got to figure this out still.
I'm not Thursday. You didn't want to get to Thursday and not know.
I know. I know. And I've made a horrible mistake because there's a women's basketball game tonight. So I'm going to have to be one of the schmucks at the store on Saturday trying to figure.
It's all going to be picked over at that time.
100%. I'm screwed. I have put myself in a bad position for failure. And I can only blame myself, so I point the thumb.
When all else fails, just go with pizza and wings. I mean, it's good. Even if you don't think it's original, you're gonna like it. You're gonna have a good experience. No, I mean, is that not you?
No, I'm into it. I was just feeling because I shaved my head actually like bald for the first time ever, and so I can't stop like touching it right now. That's why I'm doing that. I'm not stressed out about anything.
Okay. 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 Good
don't
insight.
put on the internet that I'm stressed out about anything. No, it's like I got it's kind of a big life change for me. Usually I just like shave it all the way down to the whatever, like the number one setting or whatever. But now it's like it's straight bald. It's kind of crazy.
Man. Okay. Well, it's good to know. I mean, it's similar look. It is.
But it looks probably the same. Nobody will notice, but it feels different. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Not stressed.
Well, good. Good luck. Good luck with the Nebraska women tonight. Who's coming into PBA?
Michigan.
Is this big? Is this big?
They're all kind of big, like they need to stay out of the out of harm's way and take care of business at home. So they got Michigan and then Iowa coming back on Monday. So 2 wins at home would be nice for them in their pursuit for the tournament.
Amy Williams' squad looking to get back to the NCAA tournament. Fred Hoiberg's squad looking to get back to the NCAA tournament. They were cast away at the side of the road last week at this time. And then on Thursday night, Nebraska went out and beat nationally ranked Illinois. And then on Sunday, Nebraska won at nationally ranked Oregon, no longer nationally ranked. And then last night, Nebraska got down 13 in the first half, 10 at halftime, and just blew Washington out of its own arena, out of the Huskies' own arena, which is a strange arena in the Big Ten. It doesn't seem to be up to the Big Ten caliber arena based on what I saw on the Big Ten network last night. It looks like they play in the Mountain West in basketball, but
yeah, it's
never mind.
It looks a little bit different. I kind of appreciate the uniqueness of the arena. It's like all the weird Big Ten baseball fields or something like that we have. So there was
86-72, by the way, the Nebraska victory.
There were some good things that came out of that last night. Washington, it was amazing to watch. One of the worst shooting teams in the conference, if not the worst shooting team in the conference,
on fire,
comes out and they just drill their first 7 threes, and you're like, oh my god, what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, I was ready to go to bed. I was like, well, this is the kind of night it's going to be. I'm not staying up till 11:30.
Right, and you would have not been yelled at for doing that, but like, so they understand it's a veteran team, right? Like, because if you're in that position and you're down 10 or 15, like right out of the gate, and they're making everything, it just becomes, and you're on the road, like you got to really hang in there, and they did. So give Nebraska credit. They got some things going right before halftime, and then right away to start the second half, it was, the game completely flipped. Nebraska looked like they looked confident. They looked like they knew that they were going to win, and they immediately built their lead right away to start basically what is the equivalent to the third quarter. In the first 10 minutes of the second half, they outscored Washington 24-10. And they did some great things individually as well. Defense really stepped up. So they hung in there, had some competitive stamina, showed some confidence in themselves, and got a road win that didn't look like it was going to be easy for a second.
You know what they looked like? They looked like the team before this losing streak, or when this losing streak started, that got out to a giant lead against Iowa, and then the thing collapsed. Fred Hoiberg said after the game on the radio with Kent and Jake that he thought Nebraska might have played its best 20 minutes, its best half of the year last night at Washington. But that also might have come in the 10-minute mark of the first half, or the 5-minute mark of the first half, until the 15-minute mark of the second half against Iowa, which is a tougher place to play, and a better opponent, and an opponent that actually is one you expect to shoot lights out, as opposed to Washington last night. And either way, that's the team with the kind of confidence and the ability to understand their roles and rely on each other. That's what Nebraska did, playing complementary basketball. You've got your big two with Williams and Gary, and then the other pieces, and they've changed the starting lineup. Like Sam Hoiberg's in the starting lineup now. Did Andrew Morgan start last night? I think he did.
Mm-hmm.
And like Burke is like doing his part. Burke
is still an experience, man.
He is, but
he had like a tap out that led to a steal and a run out, and then he walked up the court like he was Conor McGregor, like behind the play. It was so funny. I never know what that guy's doing, but he's an experience. It's really fun to watch, I guess.
Yeah, Fred has really, he's pushed buttons. They've cut the minutes of Braxton Mia. His homecoming was probably not as joyous as it could have been. How was I didn't see the final stats. How did Wilhelm? Did he make an impact? I watched most of the game.
He made one of those threes right out of the gate, and then he never played again after that. Okay. He had like an honorary start, it seemed like, which is funny because he had been like a pretty solid rotational player for them, but like he made the three and then immediately like came out of the game and we never saw him again.
Yeah, the only time I really noticed him in the broadcast was when he was like providing moral support for the Washington center after he got the flagrant foul for just like throwing Andrew Morgan to the ground, and they were just showing those guys like hugging on the bench during the review that the officials had to determine if it was a flagrant 1 or flagrant 2. But yeah,
I've never seen a guy get like fish hooked on the floor.
Yeah. Ouch! Didn't look good.
Oh, God. Luckily, it happened to Andrew Morgan, the football player on the team.
He's unbreakable. Yeah.
He's made of granite.
Yeah, right. Huge win. I heard some talk this week from those who are experts on basketball around our media market here. Maybe on your show, you might have been talking to Robin Washit from Husker Online. And there was like this conversation that, well, it's not really a must win. Nebraska could lose this game and still come back and be okay. It's not like they have to immediately make up for the 6-game losing streak with a 6-game winning streak. And my thought was like, all right, I understand that explanation, but I also kind of feel like they do have to win this game because it's an opportunity.
Right.
And
it hurts
if the season, yeah.
Right. So go ahead.
If this season's going to turn, if they're going to get to a place where they make the NCAA tournament, like this was the moment. Not last night, but this stretch is the moment. Like you come back from losing 6 and you beat 2 ranked teams, and they're going to have to look back at this and like say, all right, that is when things happened. And I don't know how that really would have worked if you go lose at the last place team in the Big Ten on the heels of the 2 ranked wins.
Right. And then you look at it in totality, like you just need wins. They were 4-7 in the league going into last night. And if you lose it, you're not dead, but it certainly decreases your likelihood to be able to get back to the 500 range, if not above it, which is where everyone thinks you need to be in order to get an at-large spot in the NCAA tournament. I'm talking about in conference. So like they're 5-7 right now, and you got 2 just awesome opportunities coming up against, top 25 caliber teams in your barn over the next 7 days here in Ohio State and Maryland. So you could wake up next Friday morning when we're doing our next mailbag show after tomorrow, and they could be 7-7 in the league and very much on the right side of the bubble at this point. That's how fast
everybody would have them in then.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And the final thought, Sunday, 1:00 PBA, Super Bowl Sunday, people are going to be, that's going to be an environment. Ohio State, they're good. They got the name. That's going to be something to see. So I'm looking forward to either maybe I'll go. I don't know. It seems like it'd be a good one to go to.
Super Bowl though.
Well, I'd be home for that. Right? Super Bowl kicks off at like 6:00. This is 1:00.
It's like 1:00. Yeah, it just makes for a long day. That's why I'm happy. Look, like I said, the Nebraska women usually play on that day at home, and they handed it off to the Nebraska men this year, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be on my couch on Super Bowl Sunday all day long.
Okay. Yeah, no, I hear you. Okay, that's it for the show today. We'll be back tomorrow with the mailbag. Get your questions in, lockedonneb@gmail.com. I know Vincent Nappa's already got his in, but we need more from all of you. So what do you want to know? Ask us. We'll answer on Friday. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Big Ten podcast. Craig puts the Big Ten first. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.